Hello everyone, welcome to episode 41. This is the English version of the episode 41 about Luna and Terra. So a lot has been said about the fall of Terra, the Luna token and the UST token, which is the stable coin. If you are in crypto, you would have definitely heard about this story, but there probably hasn't been a video that I've seen or a content that I've seen which explained the full story about what happened. So I will try and summarize everything that has happened so that in easy to understand words, so you understand why the fall had happened and you also understand how you can move forward. Terra is going to be relaunched as a Genesis chain or a new chain. So all that you need to know before you invest in Terra is what we'll be covering today. So let's start with the basics from the disclaimer and warnings. I'm not a financial advisor or an investment expert. My videos are for learning purposes only. So I just share whatever that I have learned, whatever that I have understood, I share in my videos. That's the primary purpose of my videos. Please make your own decision based on your own research. And also, one of the most important warnings that I give is that do not send your money to people who claim to be professional brokers or investor advisor. Anybody in the crypto space that claim that they are a professional broker or investment advisor, they're all frauds. They're all basically scammers targeting your money. They will target you via emails, comments. They will probably use my name, use anybody's name. Never ever send your crypto to anyone, because there's a lot of people who have lost their funds to these so-called professional brokers and investment advisors. So your money, you invest it. And I do not have any closed groups. I don't have Telegram groups or WhatsApp groups, because misinformation can easily be spread if you're part of a closed group like that. So I'm very active on Twitter. I'm active at Chennai to London is my handle. That's the handle that I use. I post constant updates. I post more regular updates in Twitter than in YouTube, because YouTube is not my profession. But I use Twitter as a medium to post regular updates. And not just me, you can follow, if you are in the crypto space, it will be very useful if you follow the Twitter handles, and you can get up-to-date information quite quickly. Also, Twitter is open and public, so if I say something wrong, it can be corrected by others, and there is a possibility of an open debate. So first of all, today's agenda, what happened in Luna, we'll talk about it, a brief summary. We'll talk about stable coins, because that's very essential to understand today's story, different types of stable coin, and why we never spoke about Luna in our channel. Again, we've spoken about a number of blockchains in our channel, but we've never spoken about Luna. So we'll talk about why Luna was such a huge risk from the beginning, and why did it fail, and what next from this point onwards. So first of all, a brief summary, right? Terra is the blockchain network, and it was founded by a South Korean crypto enthusiast called Do-kwon, and the mainnet was launched in 2019. Luna was the primary token of Terra. So as such, the Terraform Labs, the company, was created in 2018, and took them a year for them to launch the Terra network. There was also a person called Daniel Shin, who was a co-founder, who had left Terra Labs before even the mainnet was launched, as I understand. And we have seen in our channel, we talked about a number of EVM-enabled blockchains like the Binance Smart Chain, Ethereum, Avalanche. There was a lot of chains that we have spoken about. Terra is another blockchain network, and Luna was its base token, like how BNB is the base token of Binance Smart Chain, CRO is the base token of Kronos. Luna was the base token of the Terra blockchain network. So it was a decent blockchain. In fact, from a DeFi perspective, it had a lot of total value locked in the Terra blockchain, and was a decent blockchain. But it was heavily controlled by Do-kwon, and it was not necessarily, in my opinion, a true decentralized blockchain, I would say. The algorithmic stablecoin, they launched an algorithmic stablecoin called Terra UST, which was launched in 2020. Although the mainnet of Terra network was launched in 2019, the Terra stablecoin, or the Terra UST with the symbol of UST, was launched in 2020. In April 2022, or by April 2022, Luna and UST had a market capital of more than $45 billion. And they were on multiple centralized exchanges and decentralized exchanges. And UST trading pair was almost as common as the USDT or the USDC trading pairs. Suddenly, around the second week of May, in May 2022, within a span of like 2 to 3 days, the entire value of the whole Terra and the Luna and the UST collapsed. And Luna fell from $85 to nearly like less than 1 cent, and UST fell from $1 to about 5 cents. And what was supposed to be a stable coin pegged to $1 completely fell, and the $45 billion was nearly wiped off from the market in just 2 or 3 days. This is by far the most significant collapse, not just in the crypto industry, but the entire fintech industry. And why did this fall so dramatically? What happened? And we have spoken about so many true blockchains and many projects in our channel, but we've never spoken about Luna or the use of UST or investing in the ecosystem of Luna. We've never spoken about it as a blockchain, or I have not shared it from an investment perspective. So why did we not speak about it? And the fall of Luna and UST, which is called as a death spiral, was predicted and warned for several months by industry experts, and yet nothing was done to stop against it. Why was nothing done to stop? So we'll look at all of these details in the most simplest and easiest to understand ways that we could, because a lot has been written, but some of them has been too complex and too technical for people to understand. So in episode 20, we had talked about what a stablecoin is. A stablecoin is essentially a crypto token that is pegged to a real world currency. Like, for example, if it's pegged to USD, it's a USD based stablecoin. So there's a Tether stablecoin which is pegged to USDT, and it's called USDT. And we saw some of the examples. So in that episode, I had mentioned that generally stablecoins are backed 1:1 ratio with real world money or assets in the bank account. So like USDT and USDC, they are pegged by real world assets in the bank account or in the in whatever holding accounts that the corporation has. Like USDC is found by a corporation called Circle, which is backed by Coinbase, for example. USDT is from the Tether Corporation. However, essentially there are three broad categories of stable coins other than the real world backing. Like, what are these three categories? So one is obviously the real world currency, we just spoke about, USDT, USDC, BUSD from Binance Corporation, for example. They're all backed by a real world asset, and that's what is giving them the value, or that is what pegging them to the dollar. The second category is a crypto asset based or over collateralized and multi asset collateralized stablecoin called, like, for example, DAI is from a maker DAO corporation. We'll talk about this in a bit more detail so we can understand the difference between this and the third category, which is algorithmic stablecoins. So it's just a single asset based, it's a circular collateralization. UST is one of the examples. MIM, Magic Internet Money, is another example. So just a recap from episode 20. So we talked about something called as a circular funds. Basically, you have real world money, and then when you buy a digital asset or a crypto asset using that real world money, and then you collateralize that crypto asset back into the asset categorization, then you're basically creating a circular collateralization. And you can do this repeatedly, where if you put $3,000 as real world funds, and then you buy a crypto asset with the $3,000 and put it back into the asset categorization, or put it back as an asset collateral, then you're basically creating a circular collateral. And this circular collateral creates money out of thin air. And we spoke about it in the case of USDT, that a small portion of their backing could probably be based on this kind of a circular collateralization, but even though a large portion was still backed by real world currency. And how, from a USDT perspective, at that point of time, we spoke about the risk of having this kind of a circular collateralization. So technically, all stable coins that are backed by these kind of real world currencies need one central organization to control this asset backing. And so all these assets are centralized. So for example, USDT, USDC, BUSD, these are all centralized stable coins, because one party is the one that is controlling this, and they are publishing audit reports, and there is a control over the decision of the asset backing. So which is where the need for the decentralized stable coins came into picture. Stable coins obviously help us in terms of the trading, instead of always using fiat currency, because then you can always peg it to a dollar and you can compare it to a dollar, and the crypto rates can also be very easily compared when you have stablecoin pairs being traded against it. So in 2017, the world's first truly decentralized stablecoin or over collateralized stablecoin called DAI was created. At that time, DAI was a very simple concept. In fact, it was backed by USDC. So already USDC is a stable coin that is backed by a real world asset. What the DAI was doing was that it was having USDC as collateral and was using it as a part collateral, and the rest of it was collateralized by Ethereum, and it was running on the ERC20 protocol to begin with. So technically, instead of using a real world asset or real world currency as a collateral, they had used an already collateralized stablecoin like USDC and part collateralized it, and the rest was over collateralized by Ethereum stablecoins or Ethereum tokens, for example, ETH. In simple comparison, if you know, in India or in any country, for example, there's pawn shops, and you can go and put your gold jewels or whatever gold assets as collateral, and you can get like 50% or up to 50% or 40% of your gold's value. So if your jewels value is like, for example, 1,000 rupees or $1,000, you can get up to like $500 as loan from the pawn shop. And this is basically what is happening in this kind of a over collateralization. So for example, DAI can be minted as a 1:1 ratio for USDC depositor. So 1 USDC can get $1 DAI. But you can also get DAI by depositing Ethereum, but in a higher ratio. So for example, as a rough example, if you want $1,000 of DAI, then you need to deposit $1,500 worth of Ethereum. But what if the Ethereum value drops, right? Because Ethereum is a token which varies in value, but you need to always maintain this minimum ratio. And if the Ethereum falls down, and if you don't deposit more Ethereum to maintain this ratio, then there could be a liquidation possibility. So, but you need to always maintain this ratio. So, in 2019, the single collateral was replaced by multi-asset collateral, meaning that you could collateralize it based on all the assets that were approved by the MakerDAO Corporation. So, if the collateral ratio is not maintained, what generally happens in the pawn shops, for example, is that if you're not able to pay back the interest, or if the gold value comes down, then the pawn shop owner will always have a contract with you saying that your jewels have sunk, or it's a common terminology that we use in India, for example, that the pawn shop owner takes the ownership of the jewels if you don't maintain a particular ratio, or if you're not keeping on paying interest, or if the gold value comes down. So this is the same concept, and this is the safety net that is used to maintain the DAI collateralization, and also make sure that the volatility of the DAI is not impacted. So for example, if the Ethereum value drops significantly down and you do not deposit additional Ethereum to maintain that ratio, then the Ethereum is gone, it gets liquidated, it gets absorbed by the DAI network. And that is the simple concept that has ensured that DAI has maintained its $1 peg during the toughest of times, including the crypto meltdown of 2018. So it had faced so many tough times, and yet it had never broken, or it had never depegged so much, and it has always maintained the pegging to $1. So an algorithmic stablecoin, on the other hand, does not have real world funds and does not have other stablecoins like USDC backing it, and it practically borrows the concept from DAI, but that instead of having a stable coin backing it, it is backed by their own assets. So few algorithmic stable coins have been attempted in the past, and most of them have resulted in massive failures. There's a famous project called Basis Cash, and we'll talk about this later, why we're talking about Basis Cash. So that's when in 2020 Terra Labs under Do Kwon introduced the concept of Terra UST, which is the ticker symbol, an algorithmic stablecoin that was backed by its own token, which was Luna token. Luna was the base token of the Terra network. So they built a simple algorithm to maintain the $1 pegging. So we'll explain this simple algorithm with examples and a bit more detail. But in principle, this is like saying, the analogy would be that instead of a pawnbroker saying that instead of buying gold, or instead of using gold as a collateral, I have my own metal, use the own metal as the collateral, and he sets a value for the metal, or depending upon the popularity of that metal, he is himself using his own metal. So that's kind of what Terra Labs was trying to do at this point of time. But by this time, Terra Labs had enough investors that own metal had a value to it. So there was a marketing campaign, there was a lot of venture capitals who had put a lot of investment money into Terra Labs, and enough supporters of these projects, then they created almost like a cult following called lunatics. The followers of Luna were called as lunatics, And there was an aggressive funding for supporting this ecosystem from a lot of investors. And this cult-like support led to the initial success of the whole Terra network. And the cult-like support also meant that anybody who talked anything against the Luna network were being shot down completely. So essentially, the UST peg was maintained by a simple demand for the Luna token, the Terra network's own token, the Luna token. So this is an image that I just copied from the internet, but basically what it means is that if the UST is above peg, then it will burn more Luna, and if it is below peg, then it can buy more Luna, and you can use it to burn UST. So we will see how this concept works in reality, but essentially the fundamental principle is that you can always, in the Terra money is the ecosystem platform of Luna, you can always exchange $1 of UST for $1 worth of Luna, and you can do the same. This leads to an arbitrage scenario which basically maintains the $1 peg Binance, and we will see this if we see an example. For example, so if UST, the stable coin, is trading at greater than $1, for example, let's say it's at $1.2. So you can now buy $100 worth of Luna in the open market, and you can exchange the $100 of Luna in Terra money to 100 UST. So once you have 100 UST, you can then go and sell the 100 UST in the open market at $1.2, which means that you will get $120. So essentially you had $100, you bought Luna for that, you exchanged it for 1:1 equivalent, and you got 100 UST, and now you are selling the 100 UST in the open market at $1.2, you got $120. This arbitrage will give you a $20 profit, and this is a over exaggeration scenario, but this is just to make you understand how simple that logic works. And this what incentivizes the people to do it. So when enough people do it, the demand for the Luna goes up, the Luna price will go up, and people will buy more Luna. And UST will naturally start, when people start selling it, UST will naturally come back to $1 because more and more people are selling the UST. This is a common arbitrage principle. You can do this in any market. Basically, you can buy it from one exchange, if another exchange is having higher, you can do an arbitrage. Arbitrage is a very common principle. So the arbitrage principle combined with the single collateralization logic has been used here to a certain extent. This is not a new algorithm as such. But what happens if UST is less than $1, right? So for example, let's say UST goes to 80 cents. So you can buy 100 UST in the open market, and it is 80 cents each. So you will spend about $80. You can go to the Terra money and you can exchange this 100 UST for $100 worth of Luna, because again, it's a 1:1 equivalent in the Terra money ecosystem. Now you have $100 worth of Luna. You can go and sell it in the open market for $100. Again, you took $80 and you now be able to convert it to $100. This is again a $20 arbitrage profit that you've got. This is what incentivizes people to buy UST when the UST is going below the peg. So when enough people do this, there's a lot of people continuously buying UST, the demand for UST goes up, and the price for UST increases as more and more people buy the UST. So anything that is exchanged in the Terra money network is burnt. So when you are basically exchanging your UST into the Terra money network, that UST is burnt, and the same thing happens for Luna. When you're exchanging it, it's burnt. So the supply of Luna and Terra is also reduced by having this kind of a arbitrage mechanism. So this is a very simple concept where there is an arbitrage profit to be made, and people having the constant demand for either UST or for Luna becomes like a circular demand and supply, and that creates the utility, or one of the utilities for Luna, and that creates the value for Luna and UST. So how does it work, right? Fundamentally, the UST and Luna exchanged, like I said, is burnt, and the supply, demand and price is basically maintained in a state of constant equilibrium, constant arbitrage and constant demand. How do you maintain the demand for UST? Because why would people buy UST in the first place, right? So obviously, along with the centralized exchanges offering it, one of the biggest drivers for the demand was a protocol called Anchor protocol. This is one of the partner protocols of Luna. that came into picture that offered a 20% annual interest rate if you lock your UST into their protocol. So people obviously exchanged their assets, converted it into US dollars or whatever, and bought UST, or they bought Luna and exchanged it in Terra money and got UST, and somehow the UST was locked into the Anchor protocol at an annual interest rate of 20%, and that led to the demand for UST in the first place. And Anchor protocol also bought more Luna with the money that they're getting from these deposits, and they staked Luna for a yield. So it again, like, basically they created a value for UST and made people buy UST, and they took the UST and bought Luna. Again, there's more demand for UST. So it's a circular demand that they've created. So in January 2022, there was a non-profit organization called Luna Foundation Guard that was also formed in Singapore. One of the reasons this was formed was because there was this fear that there is no collateralization, there's no backing for the UST token, and so what happens when there is the demand dies down? There needs to be some sort of a real world backing is what led to this moment. And so they bought, or they suggested that there was a lot of investor funding, there was a lot of funding that happened, and they were buying crypto assets like Bitcoin and keeping it in the reserve to be used in an event when there is a threat to the UST depegging from the $1 or any threat to the ecosystem. LFG, Luna Foundation Guard, was again founded by or is headed by Do Kwon and some of his co-founders or crypto venture capital firm heads. So it was again a centrally controlled entity, I would say, at that point of time. So what was the flaw and logic of UST, right? The logic was simple, but fundamentally the biggest risk was the death spiral. So the whole concept was built based on the cult following of Luna and the constant demand for Luna and the confidence of Luna and UST. So if there ever a threat to the confidence of Luna, it was always going to fail, because all it takes was the loss of confidence for a token like this. And it was doomed to fail, as the liquidity to sell on an open market will not exist. Basically, the arbitrage will not work. The arbitrage that we just explained so spectacularly and simply will end up failing. How? So we will just again use a very simple scenario and explain why it will fail. So let's say if UST goes to 80 cents. So you buy 100 UST in the open market and for $80, and you get 100 UST. Now you're going to go and exchange this 100 UST to $100 worth of Luna, and you will get $100 worth of Luna at that point of time. Let's say the Luna was $50 at that point, right? So you will get 2 Luna. Now imagine you're going to sell this 2 Luna in the open market, but by this time you had done all this. By this time when you bought 100 UST and you're buying $100 Luna, what if Luna had fallen to $39? What if there was a rapid fall, and if in the open market now Luna is only worth $78? So you have your arbitrage has now resulted in a $2 loss. This creates a panic on Luna and panic on UST both, because a successful arbitrage, what used to be a successful arbitrage, has now resulted in a $2 loss. Let's look at example 2, where it's going to create an even bigger loss, but this time the depegging is much smaller. So ironically, if the depegging is, let's say, 2%, 98 cents, you go and buy 100 UST worth of $100 worth of UST in the open market. So you buy it and you get 98. So you get it at $98. So now you are exchanging 100 UST in Terra money for $100 worth of Luna. And let's say this time 1 Luna was again worth for $50, so you get 2 Luna. And imagine if Luna had fallen down to $39, same scenario, and you are now getting $78. So now your money is now $20. You incurred a loss from the $98 investment. So previously, a big depegging, we saw that it was creating only a $2 loss, wasn't significant. But you can see that the smallest depegging will result in the biggest loss here. And that's what is the irony of it. It's that even the smallest depegging from $1 will create a panic here. And the longer that this depegging is going to last, the longer the Luna's value is also going to get lost, or the panic is going to increase. So all you need to trigger the death spiral was just pure logic and just enough funds to do it. There was no secret about it. It was a very, very simple logic to cause a chaos in this algorithm. And it was pointed out several times by industry experts, analysts. In fact, back in 2018, when Luna was proposed, just as an idea, one of the industry experts actually posted and shared it, saying that why it suffers from the biggest flaw, which is the death spiral. It was pointed out several times at that point of time, and it was pointed out that how the attack plan was so simple for anyone who really wanted to attack it at that point of time. And also, even back in like 2019 and 2020 and again in 2021, for example, people kept pointing it out again and again with simple examples as to how this collapse can happen, and with detailed analysis of what we just explained. And the logic was so flawed that several articles were written, not just one. It was almost like a blueprint was written on how to attack it. So there was a famous thread by a person called Freddie Reynolds written in November 2021. I will provide the link in the description, where he had provided all the details like about 6 months back. So technically, the precursor event, although the actual attack or actual event had started on the May 8th, the precursor event started on the May 4th. And the trigger event was called as a pool migration, 3-pool to 4-pool migration. So again, 3-pool is a liquidity pool on the Curve Finance, which is one of the primary battlegrounds of stablecoins, I would say. So Curve Finance was providing an exchange pool between USDC, USDT and DAI. So anybody who wanted to exchange USDC to USDT, DAI to USDC, DAI to USDT, this was the biggest liquidity pool that was available. And this whole concept of liquidity pool in Curve Finance was called as Curve, where by providing liquidity in these liquidity pools, it's like the foundation of DeFi lending and earning, and you will get rewards based on the biggest liquidity pool that is out there. And this reward was also based on who's having more liquidity, who's controlling more liquidity in these liquidity pools. So DAI, being the main decentralized stablecoin of choice in Curve Finance, was in a pretty dominant position at that point of time, and this 3-pool of USDC, USDT and DAI was dominating the market, and there was a lot of reward and money to be earned if another stablecoin was able to come and take the position of DAI and take these Curve rewards basically. And Luna tried to go after the DAI and tried to launch a concept called as 4-pool, where it was, instead of DAI, it was trying to put UST, and Frax is another stable coin from another third party, USDC and USDT. And for stable coins, like I said, Curve is very, very important because it maintains a huge liquidity pool, and this deep liquidity also helps maintaining the dollar peg. So when so many stable coins are in one liquidity pool, you can always exchange it for another. A low liquidity stable coin, like any token, when the liquidity is low, that can be easily disrupted. The price can easily be disrupted. So again, what happened was they were trying to move from this, remove all the liquidity of USDC from the other liquidity pools and put it into a 4-pool liquidity for this this attempt at destabilizing DAI or taking over from DAI in terms of the dominant position. And this was expected that it will be happening on the 8th, the formation of the 4-pool event. So on the 4th of May, they created this liquidity pool, and on the 8th of May, for forming into the 4-pool liquidity, they removed liquidity from the other pools. So UST was removed from the liquidity pools by the Terra Labs team, and it was all announced. Everything was known to the public. So they were preparing for the new 4-pool curve, and they removed about $150 million worth of UST from the liquidity pool. So liquidity was removed, which means that UST wasn't available that much. So at this point of time, when UST wasn't available this much, within 10 minutes of the liquidity being removed, about $85 million of UST was being sold in the liquidity pools, which means that it was being covered or overpowered with UST, being excess of UST was being sold, and USDC was being continuously drained. So when USDC was being continuously drained, the liquidity pools ultimately ended up with an excess of UST, and there was liquidity that was not there for the UST at that point of time, and this caused the initial depegging of UST from $1 to 99 cents. So was about a 1 or 2 cent that was depegging at that point of time. Almost the whole of that Sunday, 8th of May, UST was fighting to maintain its peg, with several stable coins being deposited. A lot of other investors came in, they were depositing stable coins into the liquidity pool, trying to balance UST. But ultimately, UST was going up and there were no other stable coins that were being left because it was continuously being sold in the market. So there was no major effort at that point on that day from Terra Labs, as I understand or as I have seen it. And this was the day that on the 8th of May, on Sunday, if Terra Labs had wanted to do something, they could have acted quite quickly, put back the funding into the liquidity pools and stop the attack if they wanted. And on 9th of May, the social media attack started, or people started talking about it. There were a few accounts that started talking about the depeg, because the depeg was, UST was not $1 for almost a whole day, and people started talking how a stable coin that was supposed to maintain a $1 depeg was 99 cents for almost a whole day. And I explained the importance of it not having a $1 peg earlier, and this started the social media discussion. And ultimately, the 1 cent depegging and the social media discussion started the death spiral to kick in. So in many of the centralized exchanges, UST was being sold below the peg. So somebody had accumulated a lot of UST before this date, and they were selling UST for 99 cents. So in almost all of centralized exchanges, UST was being sold exactly at that 99 cents. So that the depegging was constantly shown in all the order books and in mass volumes. And this further escalated when the centralized exchanges were getting this 99 cents reflection of the depegging. The social media panic combined with the market panic, and the sales started escalating into the retail users. So till the 9th of May, it was practically being controlled by a larger group. But on the 9th of May, the retail users started joining the panic for the first time, and mass selling of the UST started, and people started to withdraw from the anchor protocol as well. So suddenly, where the liquid UST that was available in the market became like 3 or 4 times more, because the UST that was being logged into the anchor protocol was being withdrawn and being sold into the market as well. So what was available as 20 to 30% is now about 60 or 70% more UST is now available in the market and being sold as well. So the demand was going down. People were selling more and more, and not enough people were buying UST. So the supply was increasing rapidly, causing the depegging to happen even more. And what was happening was, because everybody was going to the Terra money and using the UST to mint more Luna to be able to go and sell it back, the minting of Luna cost started increasing rapidly. So Luna was where Luna was being burned because of the arbitrage. It was being bought and burnt at the same time. Now people were only selling UST, nobody was buying UST, which means that Luna was not being burnt. Luna was only being minted more and more, and suddenly the volume of tokens of Luna was also going up and up and up. And when the volume of tokens was going up and up, Luna was also being dumped in the market, and the Luna price started to go down as well. This is when the death spiral had fully kicked in. Luna Foundation God on the 9th of May announced that it was selling some Bitcoin, but it was not very clear how much Bitcoin they were announcing or selling, or how much funding they were putting back to stop this. There was no clarity provided by Luna at that point of time. So any aggressive action, this is basically the second day on the Monday, 9th of May, any aggressive action from Luna Foundation God or Do-Kwon or Terra Labs could have practically stopped it at that point. All you need to put is $1 billion or $2 billion into the liquidity pool, and that's it. The attack would have been stopped. Or even a public announcement that they were putting something in place could have stopped it. On 10th of May, Tuesday, literally it has been second day by now, Do-Kwon announced that there was a recovery plan that was coming, and they were still working on it with no details whatsoever. And again, from that point, for several hours till about the 11th of May, nothing was being tweeted by the Terra Labs team, the Do-Kwon, or by anybody. There was absolutely no plan, and it was clear by the 11th of May, that by the Wednesday, that there was no plan, and nobody was even trying to come out with a plan at that point of time. And those are the 3 crucial days where Terra Labs did nothing, and where actually the Luna lost its entire value. So On 6th of May, Luna was about $80. It was prior to the attack. On 8th of May, it was about $65. On 9th, it had fallen down only to about $50, and which is practically the second day of attack. Even on the third day of attack, on the Tuesday, Luna had fallen down to $35, which is not unheard of in crypto. Several days, even the biggest of the tokens have had a 50% or more than 50% falls. So even by almost the Tuesday, Luna's confidence was still high, and an action on that point of time could have practically stopped the attack. In fact, 3 days after the attack. But by 11th of May is when people had lost all hope, because there's no recovery plan being announced, and it fell down to $1.7. So from about $80 on Wednesday, it had fallen down to $1.7, about 98% down. And on 12th of May, Terra Lab basically said that they are going to mint unlimited Luna tokens to save UST. So they were willing to sacrifice the Luna holders, trying to sacrifice UST, because UST was being seen as the primary asset that they wanted to save at that point of time. So on the 12th of May, morning 12th of May, Luna had fallen down from the previous day $1.7 to about 30 cents. It fell down to about 3 cents in the afternoon, and about less than 1 cent, about $0.003 in the night. So Luna had kept on losing 99% of the value in a span of every 6 hours. So people had been losing money every 6 to 7 hours continuously. So this point of time, I was actually in a road trip, and I was not following this so closely at that point of time. Although I was following the news and I was understanding what was happening, I was not able to tweet. But this is the time on 11th of May that I started tweeting about it, explaining what was happening, and also explaining in a long thread why it is not safe to buy Luna because of what was happening. I explained clearly the losing of the peg, the chain reaction, and also how 99% funds are being lost, and why I have not shared Luna before. I'll explain again more as to why I had not shared about Luna. But I also explained that it's not safe to buy it. But people did not understand, and a lot of other social media influencer groups, Indian social media influencer groups, who had absolutely zero knowledge about what was happening in Luna, they were promoting this event or promoting the value loss, saying that Luna has gone from $60 to $1, and it could quickly come back without even realizing what was happening. They had zero clue about what was happening behind the scenes. All they were seeing was a price action, seeing that Luna had gone from $80 to $1 in their mind, that it could quickly go back to, even if it doesn't go back to $80, if it goes to $10, it's still a 10 times profit. And that's all they were explaining in their accounts repeatedly. And people following these social media influencers started putting more and more money, and that's when I had to post again to explain what was happening. So I again and again posted, said, why is it going down 99%? Because they are minting Luna by the second. So in fact, on the 13th of May, I posted a sample that in the morning there were about 350 billion tokens and 350 million tokens, and it had quickly jumped to about from about 350 million when the start of the event had happened. It went to 350 billion, about 1,000 times more in about 4 to 5 days. But within a span of hours, it went to about 6.5 trillion tokens. So you can see how quickly they had minted money. So a coin that had a total supply of about 350 million went to 350 billion in 2 or 3 days, and then again from 350 billion to about 6.5 trillion tokens. So they were minting so many tokens that it was pretty dangerous to buy it. And if you did not understand the concept about total supply in a crypto and what the total supply means to the market capital of a crypto, then that's when you would end up buying these kind of tokens. And for the first time since I had started posting these crypto educational contents, I always say not a financial advice, but I practically posted it as a financial advice, saying that do not buy this token, because what happened was people bought into the token with like thousands of pounds on May 11th, ended up with less than $1 by the end of May 11th. Again, by 12th morning, they had bought like again another $1,000. Within a few hours, they ended up with $1. And on 13th, if they had bought it within few minutes, they were ending up with $1, because that is the ferociousness with which the Terra Labs and Do Kwon were minting Luna tokens at that point of time, and they had zero clue of the reality. And that's why I had to post again and again to people to explain what was happening, because people were buying it blindly because of the social media influencing that was happening at that point of time. So one of the tweets was even translated into a regional language. Again, people understand regional language better in Tamil, for example. So if you're following me in another regional language and you understand my tweet, you're welcome to translate it into a regional language, because that explains to people much better than just posting it in English. That's why I do my videos in Tamil and in English. So why did I mentioned in my tweet that we have never spoken about Luna or the Terra ecosystem. Why did we not explicitly mention about Luna or the Terra ecosystem, and why have I not bought any or invested any of my funds into the blockchain, despite it being a decent blockchain, huge TVL being invested in DeFi, and the huge support? Three main reasons. One of the reasons is its leader Do Kwon is an egoistic crypto leader who never listened to any rational argument. He had so much control over Luna and the Terra ecosystem, in my view. It's almost like Justin Sun controlling the Tron ecosystem, which is why we have never spoken about Tron as well that much and not gone into DeFi of Tron. That is one of the reasons that it's not worth being part of moving into Web3. So one of the things that we are trying to explain in our channel is about Web3, which we will talk about more and more in the future, is a true decentralization. I did not believe that Terra was a true decentralized network at all in the first place. And I had concerns that even a small portion of the circular collateralization, like we have seen in USDT, where it was creating a circular collateralization of USDT, but USD was practically a fully circular stable coin, money created out of nothing. So it had zero value from the beginning in the first place. And the community was a cult. It was backing Do Kwon blindly, regardless of what he was saying, and they were termed lunatics, and they will shut down any rational argument against the Luna ecosystem prior to this. In fact, every rational warning, explicit scenario, explanation, Do Kwon has always responded by calling people stupid, by calling people retarded, by challenging them, in fact, by even challenging them to go and try any of these scenarios that just unfolded. And his cult also followed. They called people delinquent, they called people by all sorts of curse words. They were brutal to anybody who tried to explain or have a rational argument about them. In fact, Do Kwon also publicly called out people as poor, and he criticized whoever criticizes his algorithm. He used a sense of privilege to dismiss them. He called them poor, saying that you will always stay poor, I don't have change for you, and all sorts of language that he has used in the past is something that an egoistic leader would use. And not many people in the crypto space are like this. They're mostly humble. Like, the Binance CEO, for example, he's one of the most humble people. So there are a lot of humble people in the crypto space in terms of leadership. Sandeep Nailwal, for example. But Do Kwon is probably almost like a Justin Sun, I would say. And in fact, one of the things that he wanted as a crypto leader is that most other crypto leaders want a successful ecosystem. They want all projects to succeed. They want the other projects to succeed. In fact, they help out each other if another project is in trouble. They go out of the way to support other projects. But Do Kwon publicly wanted other projects to fail. He in fact said this multiple times, that he doesn't want just to succeed, he wants to make sure that the other projects fail. In fact, DAI, for example, he was trying to kill the entire DAI project, and he said publicly that I want DAI to die in my hands. In fact, just about a week before this whole collapse had started, Do Kwon in a famous interview said that 95% of the crypto projects are going to die, and there is entertainment for him in watching all the other companies die. The interviewer even jokingly said that you're evil, but that's how he was explaining. He was laughing about it, saying that there is entertainment for me to watch these other crypto companies die. And we've tried in our channel to stick to facts. Personally, we've tried not to go against individuals or not to explain anything about an individual, but it's very hard to explain the failure of this project and all the problems of this project without explaining the kind of individual that Do Kwon was, which is why we've spoken about him. No offense to him or no personal things against him. So again, the same thing that Do Kwon is doing is now being controlled by Justin Sun. He's launched again a stable coin which is not backed by any assets, and He's again launching a decentralized stablecoin, similar to how the UST was tried out, called USDD. So if you are going to maintain your assets in a stablecoin, try not to maintain it in USDD, regardless of the initial promise that it might offer. So there was one allegation that was brought out by CoinDesk that the famous stablecoin, or the failed stablecoin Basis Cash, was also something that the Terra Labs and Do Kwon was the ones that were creating it. But it's not been substantiated fully, but the Terra Lab employees, the former Terra Lab employees, have claimed that Do Kwon was the person who was behind it. So if this was true, then he knew that the project would fail, he knew that the logic would fail, and yet he was still dismissing people who were explaining it. So after the 13th of May, when the final days of Luna was being discussed, many industry leaders stepped in, and they were the ones who ultimately stopped the minting of Luna tokens and stopped Do Kwon from sacrificing more and more Luna investors by stopping the unlimited minting of Luna tokens. And this was all done without any consensus from the community. This is all a completely unilateral decision taken by a few individuals who were controlling the entire blockchain. In fact, the control was so prominent that the entire blockchain was halted by the validators to prevent any transaction from happening. So you couldn't withdraw from the exchanges, you couldn't make any transaction in the exchanges. The whole blockchain was completely stopped. Now, the whole concept of a blockchain is that it cannot be stopped. It cannot be stopped by a group of people. You know, the 51% POC or the POW, whatever it is, proof of work or proof of stake, whatever it is, there needs to be a 51% control to do anything against a blockchain. That whole thing went out of the window when you realize that the blockchain itself was completely stopped or halted by a group of individuals. This was later picked up by a lot of industry experts who were even questioning the validity of this being a true blockchain in the first place, if it can be stopped in such an easy manner by just a group of people in Do Kwon. CZ from Binance even mentioned that he had a long call with the Terra team, and to make them stop minting the Luna token, and to make them to start the blockchain again. Else Luna would have minted trillions and trillions of more coins, and people would have continuously kept on losing money at that point of time. It is only because industry leaders stepped in that Luna was at least saved to that extent from that point of time. So having said all this, there are a lot of retail investors who got completely trapped in Luna, and a lot of retail investors who had over-invested in Luna alone. So the key learning from all of this is diversifying. I mentioned it multiple times: diversify your investments. Never keep all your investments in just one blockchain or one token or one group of tokens. So even some of the projects that I have believed in or I have personally invested in shared have not taken off. There were examples of Vex token, for example. The whole project died. But that is where diversifying the investment. I've always said that never keep your investments in one bracket or one basket, and it is too much of a risk to do that. And a lot of people had put all their money into Luna ecosystem, and that's when they had lost practically everything during this point. And also do your own research. The social media promoters, including me, I'm not a social media promoter. I do not promote anything for money. If you had watched my channel, I've never done any brand endorsements or any promotions till now. But a lot of people who post on social media are promoters of a coin. They take money and they promote an ecosystem for money with zero knowledge of what was happening. So even during this demise, during the last days, there were so many people like with the token, with like earn with so and so and so on. They were just basically just promoting this as an opportunity to buy into the token. So spend time, learn crypto before you invest, and knowledge is gold in crypto. And lower your risk. I've mentioned this so many times that crypto is a volatile investment option. So if you are here in this as an investment, then never risk more funds than you can afford to lose. I posted an episode 19, where I've posted a lot of risk reduction tips, so you can watch it just as an idea on how you can control your psychology before you start investing. These will all help in the future, especially if you lost funds in Luna. Where do you go from now? So where do the retail investors go from now who've been holding thousands of dollars worth of Luna or UST? There have been several proposals. Some of them have been plans from Do Kwon and Terra Labs to abandon the Luna chain and create a new token, new fork basically, without UST, and having realized that algorithmic stablecoins don't work. So one of them that was widely supported by industry experts like Vitalik Buterin was the one below, which is a person called Fatman. And Persian Capital explained what it is basically, that 99.6% of the investors are retail investors. And you can easily support them by refunding them by selling the funds that the Luna Foundation Guard is holding, whatever reserves that the Luna Foundation Guard is holding. And that proposal had a lot of vote when it was proposed in the Terra Money website. But that has not been the one that is taken forward by Do Kwon. Do Kwon replaced it with his own proposal, saying that he's going to create a new fork, a new token. They're calling it Genesis, but it's practically a fork. It's just a copy paste, abandoning the whole UST, abandoning the whole Luna. They're creating a new network. This has been questioned by industry experts, but that is the one that is moving forward, because that's the one that has basically been taken forward without consensus from the or there is a consensus, but it's because they control so much of the Luna ecosystem. So the general consensus or the general want of the investors is to burn the Luna tokens and not fork the Terra 2.0. But they keep deleting all the posts in the Terra Money, and even the forking, people have called out, why would forking have any value? But for all that's going to happen, the Luna ecosystem is going to get relaunched again with a new name, and they're just going to have the support again from retail investors who will blindly go and invest because of the amount of money that is being invested by the investors, the venture capitalists. That's what is going to happen. But if you want to stay safe, then again, know that it's a centralized ecosystem. It's not a truly decentralized blockchain. And be aware that again, this is going to basically fund the venture capitalists and fund Do Kwon and his team, and not going to be a retail investing as such. It's not going to benefit the retail investors. So 28th of May, tomorrow actually is going to be the day when the new network is going to get launched. So ultimately what's going to happen is the Terra Labs team will recover all their losses. The Terra Labs team and the investors will recover all their losses. The retail investors will probably be pouring all their money to fund these Terra Labs team and these venture capitalists when the new Terra ecosystem launches on 28th May. That's what is going to happen. But again, what this will all lead to, the whole thing will lead to, is that there are going to be draconian worldwide legislative controls. That's what is going to probably happen in the longer run, because people will talk about this Luna fall, this whole thing that happened, similar to the 9/11 incident for air travel. So this is just an analogy that I'm giving, that you would have known this 9/11 incident, September 11th, on the Twin Towers, when Twin Towers was attacked. The impact that it had on air travel was that the security checks that got implemented after that point for air travel was just so stringent that even 20 years later, the impact is still being felt. If you have to go through security checks, there's a long queue in the airport, there's thorough frisking, you can't carry essential liquids, and you have to reach the airport hours before the travel. The air travel has become so much more complicated because of one incident, and it was a huge incident. People lost lives, and it's probably justified what has happened, but probably the amount of impact that it has caused is much more long-lasting and horrendous in terms of the impact of going through airport security. And this event in Luna, the forking, could create similar impact in the long run. People could, people already talking about making decentralized finance more and more difficult for the common man. So the rich people, they fly in business class, they have priority lanes, they have private jets, but the common man will be the one who will suffer in the end. The retail investors will be the one who will suffer in the end. So the poor people, as per what the Luna Foundation or the Luna group calls them. So the final words, is there any good news at all? Is there any positive in this whole thing? Is that there's one big positive. This is by far the biggest negative event in the crypto industry. It's almost as big as the Lehman Brothers fall in 2008, which led to the worldwide recession. But it wasn't even the fall of Luna. It was the fall of UST as a stable coin that had been used by so many centralized exchanges and held by so many DeFi protocols. If this had happened in a traditional finance, it would have triggered a massive collapse. But the major cryptos did lose its value, like 12% impact almost for Bitcoin going from $35,000 to $30,000. And major stable coins like USDT, BUSD, they have all withstood further FUD attacks, fear and uncertainty and demand attacks. Basically, people tried to do the same thing to USDT, but USDT kept on withstanding all those attacks. So with all the algorithmic stable coins, with at least USD gone, what is left, the majority of the market is no longer fake imaginary money. So again, unless and until if Tron makes it more and more bigger with USDT, it could again cause a similar issue, but hopefully not. But all of this, what it meant is that the remarkable resilience, the word resilience is the one that many people have spoken about. So crypto tokens surviving this crash shows the progress that has been made in the blockchain industry, and personally, it has only renewed my faith in the future of blockchain and crypto in the fintech industry. So it's also very, very important that why we need to be careful in the choice of our investments, and why we need to spend more and more time in educating ourselves before we choose to enter into crypto or enter into crypto investment or blockchain investment in the future. So again, I just wanted to finish by saying that this content is purely from an education perspective. I did not have anything against the ecosystem or anything against any individuals. I just wanted to explain in the most simplest of words before you go ahead and continue your journey in the crypto space. So like always, hope you found this useful. Until next time, thank you, bye.